When you watch a video of a tense, public standoff between a law enforcement officer and an individual demanding special treatment, what you are actually witnessing is a high-stakes, real-time psychological experiment that has profound implications for your neurobiology, your cardiovascular health, and your everyday stress management. As a health expert, I look at these viral encounters not through the lens of legalities or social media drama, but through the lens of human physiology, the autonomic nervous system, and the fascinating ways that entitlement, confrontation, and public pressure alter our brain chemistry. Most people watch these videos for entertainment or out of a sense of morbid curiosity, completely unaware that observing or participating in such intense social friction triggers a cascade of stress hormones that can linger in the body for hours, affecting everything from blood pressure to immune function. Today, we are going to break down the exact anatomy of these public confrontations, exploring what happens inside the human brain when entitlement meets authority, how acute stress shapes the behavior of both the citizen and the officer, and most importantly, the actionable physiological strategies you can use to maintain absolute composure when facing high-stress interpersonal conflicts in your own life. To understand why these public confrontations escalate so rapidly, we have to look closely at the psychology and neurobiology of what is commonly referred to as entitlement. In clinical terms, a deep-seated sense of entitlement often stems from a combination of hyper-individualism, a lack of cognitive empathy, and a defense mechanism against underlying vulnerability or anxiety. When an individual feels that rules should bend specifically for them, their brain has effectively constructed a reality where their personal needs take absolute precedence over collective social structures. From a neurological standpoint, this involves the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for social behavior and decision-making, and the amygdala, the brain's emotional threat detector. When an entitled individual is confronted by a police officer, a figure representing absolute societal boundaries, the individual's brain does not register a routine legal check, instead, it registers a profound threat to their ego and social status. This perceived threat triggers an immediate shift from logical thinking to a survival-driven state, activating the sympathetic nervous system, often referred to as the fight-or-flight response. The moment this system takes over, the body releases a massive surge of adrenaline and cortisol, causing the heart rate to spike, pupils to dilate, and respiration to shallow. Because the individual is operating under an emotional hijack, their ability to process logic drops significantly, leading to the erratic, defensive, and loud behaviors you frequently see in these videos. On the other side of this interaction stands the law enforcement officer, whose physiological state is equally critical to the outcome of the situation. Officers are trained to operate under high-stress conditions, but they are not immune to the laws of human biology. When an officer encounters a hostile, uncooperative citizen, their own sympathetic nervous system is activated. The key difference lies in autonomic regulation and professional habituation. Through rigorous training, an experienced officer learns to employ cognitive control to override the primal urge to fight or flee, utilizing techniques like tactical breathing to stimulate the vagus nerve and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which acts as the body's natural brake system to slow down the heart and restore calm. However, if the citizen's behavior is exceptionally unpredictable or aggressive, the officer's cognitive load increases exponentially. They must simultaneously assess physical threats, remember complex legal protocols, manage public onlookers, and control their own emotional responses. This intense cognitive demand can lead to tunnel vision and auditory exclusion, where the brain prioritizes immediate survival cues over peripheral information, which is why maintaining a calm, predictable demeanor is the single most effective way a citizen can diffuse a tense encounter and ensure everyone's physical safety. When analyzing what to do and what absolutely not to do during any public interaction with authority, the physiological data points toward a clear set of behaviors that preserve both your health and your legal safety. The absolute first rule is the conscious suppression of vocal escalation. When you raise your voice, your brain receives feedback that you are in physical danger, which further elevates your cortisol levels and accelerates your heart rate, locking you into a state of panic. By deliberately speaking in a slow, low-pitched, and measured tone, you utilize what psychologists call emotional contagion, a phenomenon where humans naturally mimic the emotional state and behavioral cues of those around them. If you remain calm, you actively make it easier for the officer's nervous system to remain calm as well. Furthermore, keeping your hands visible and making slow, deliberate movements prevents the officer's amygdala from misinterpreting a sudden gesture as a physical threat. Conversely, the worst thing you can do is engage in verbal posturing, issuing threats of legal retaliation mid-encounter, or physically invading the officer's personal space. These actions force the officer's brain to prioritize physical defense over communication, virtually guaranteeing that the situation will escalate into physical restraint or arrest, which inflicts severe physical and psychological trauma on your body. Living in a highly connected world means that many of these encounters are shaped by the presence of a third variable, the public audience or smartphones recording the event. The awareness of being watched adds a massive layer of social stress, which researchers know is one of the most potent triggers for cortisol release in humans. For the citizen, the presence of a camera can either cause them to exaggerate their performance of entitlement to save face, or it can induce a state of paralyzing anxiety. For the officer, the knowledge that their actions will be scrutinized by millions can create a hyper-vigilant state, where the fear of professional ruin mixes with the immediate need to maintain public order. This collective tension creates a highly volatile environment where a single misstep can cause a complete breakdown of communication. Understanding this dynamics allows us to see that these public standoffs are rarely just about a traffic violation or a minor ordinance. They are complex dances of human ego, neurological stress responses, and systemic pressures playing out in real time on the concrete stage of our communities. The long-term health consequences of frequently engaging in or even obsessively watching these high-friction public interactions are deeply concerning to medical professionals. Chronic activation of the stress response, without adequate periods of recovery, leads to systemic inflammation, weakened immune responses, and an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. When you constantly expose your nervous system to the high-conflict energy of entitlement and confrontation, your brain becomes conditioned to see the world as a hostile place, keeping your baseline cortisol levels elevated and disrupting your sleep architecture and metabolic health. Therefore, mastering the art of de-escalation, practicing radical emotional regulation, and understanding the biological underpinnings of human behavior during conflict is not just a social skill, it is a fundamental pillar of preventative medicine and long-term wellness. In summary, public confrontations between law enforcement and entitled citizens are complex biological events driven by acute stress, neurological threat detection, and the reciprocal activation of the fight-or-flight response in both parties. Surviving and diffusing these encounters requires absolute emotional regulation, a low and measured vocal tone, and a conscious effort to avoid triggering the survival mechanisms of the brain. If you found this information valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and let me know in the comments what topic you want to see next.